Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather. I read a lot of books, and this year I am working on finishing my 73rd book, which is the most I have ever read in a year, so I'm really proud of myself. And today I'm here to talk about which books were my favorite, so let's just jump right in. I am not the person who is ranking my favorite books today. We're just gonna go, and this is gonna be my top 15 books of 2023 in no particular order. I'm gonna try and be brief, give you like a real quick one-sentence synopsis and tell you what I loved about it, so that if you haven't read any of these, maybe they're ones that you'll pick up in the new year. And if you have read any of them, please let me know which one was your favorite in the comments down below. I'm gonna start with a book I don't physically own because it was one I read on audiobook, and that is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. We have a young man, an old woman, and an octopus who realize that their lives are better because each other are in it. And this book made me smile, this book made me sob, and this book made me laugh. I loved it so much. The writing was impeccable. Next up, we have A Man Called Uwe by Fredrik Backman. Fredrik Backman is one of my all-time favorite authors. I absolutely love him. This book is about a very cranky, very down on his luck older man who realizes that his life is worth living because of the connections around him. This is another book that had me sob. And I always think that I'm not much of a literary fiction girl until I look at my favorites every year, and it's full of literary fiction. This is one that I highly recommend. I consider it a modern classic, and if you haven't read it, again, please, please, please go pick up this book or anything by Fredrik Backman. Continuing in the vein of literary fiction books, we've got Tomorrow Times 3 by Gabrielle Zevin. This book had a chokehold on my heart. We have two best friends who decide to start a video game company after the launch of their first video game goes pretty viral around the world. This book is full of connections and loss and love and friendship. So many quotable moments, so many hard moments to read. This one is just kind of like, it's weird to describe a book about video games as a saga, but I would say that this is the saga of our two main characters' lives, Sam and Sadie. Parts of this book were written in such a unique way that I've never seen done before, that it's one that's going to stick with me for a really, really long time. Next on my list is The Quiet Tenant by Clémence Michelin. This is a book about the lives of three women who are impacted by a serial killer in the town that they lived in. This book was just very inspiring. It was a highlight on the lives of victims rather than an in-depth look at the life of a serial killer. And I just feel like it is a very empowering, very beautifully written book. I got to meet the author at Mississippi Book Fest, and if you're looking for a thriller that leans more into the literary side of things, this is definitely one to pick up. To no one's surprise, the next book that I'm going to mention is Divine Rivals. This is by Rebecca Ross. I always explain this book as if World War I or World War II were set in a fantasy land, and instead of countries fighting, it is gods fighting. But we're focused more on the lives of two reporters and their kind of you've got mail back and forth letter writing to each other while being in the midst of wartime. It is a beautiful story full of the harshness, brutality, and casualties of war, while also centering around a really sweet and beautiful romance, and also holy moly, the cliffhanger at the end. So happy that I've already picked up the sequel and can jump into it very soon. This one is YA, and it's one of the first YA books I have enjoyed in a long, long time. Rebecca Ross's writing is chef's kiss. Beautiful, impeccable, immaculate. The first sentence of this book uses the word petrichor, which is one of my favorite words of all time. Let's talk about another book that I don't have the physical copy of, and that is How to Stay Married. This is a nonfiction memoir about this man's marriage and the almost ending of said marriage because of his wife's infidelity, but then the reconciliation of that marriage. It is an exploration of love, of loss, of grief, of finding faith when you're not sure if you believe in anything anymore. It is laugh out loud funny. It is tug on your heart sad, but in the midst of it is just real people finding beauty in life, and definitely one of my top favorite nonfictions of all time. This author is hilarious. Any of his books that you pick up, I think that you will find something great, beautiful, funny, hard-hitting from. So Harrison Scott Key is definitely one to watch out for. And How to Stay Married actually made the Goodreads top picks for humor this year. So Next up, we have a book by one of my favorite authors of all time, and that is Brandon Sanderson with Tress of the Emerald Sea. And I just really loved this. To give a very, very quick synopsis, we have got Tress, who is in love, but the love of her life's father sends her love interest off to find somebody else to marry. Tress doesn't want to put up with this, and so she commandeers a pirate ship and sets off on a grand adventure. There are talking animals. There is a deaf character that I really appreciated. There is swashbuckling, good, fun pirate times, and you just will fall in love with Tress and her collection of cups and the growth that she goes through in this book to become what she needs to be for herself and for her love is just a really sweet, beautiful story. I think this is a really, really good story to pick up if you are wanting to get into fantasy and don't know where to start. Another book that I do have a physical copy of, but I have left it at school, is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This book, this thriller, kind of took the world by storm when it came out. I've got two women born on the same day at almost the same time at the same hospital whose lives intersect. And one of them runs a very successful podcast highlighting women, and the other one wants out of her really kind of crappy life, and she's obsessed with denim. The way that these two collide with each other and the mess that starts going down, they start revealing things to each other on the podcast, is mind-blowing. It is one of the most fast-paced thrillers I've read in a long time. We've got some really good exploration of some pretty dark topics. I'd look up trigger warnings, but this is one that had me flipping pages until I got to the end. I could not put it down. We're going to talk about a series next, a very viral series, a very popular fantasy series. And if you haven't figured out what series I'm talking about, here you go. It's the Empyrean series, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. These are the two books that are out right now. I feel like I don't need to say very much about these books, but let me just summarize it as we've got Dragon School with the stakes of Divergent, with the school setting of Harry Potter, with the flight training of Top Gun, plus a really steamy, angsty, perfect, but also kind of toxic, but also you kind of love it romance. Is it the best written thing I've ever read? Absolutely not in any sense of the word. Is it a fun time from start to finish? Yes. This book was pretty polarizing for people, but y'all, I loved it. I ate it up. That's all I have to say about that. All right, continuing on the fantasy train, we have got Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. Honorable mentions definitely go to Serpent in the Wings of Night and Ashes in the Star-Cursed King, because everything I have picked up by this author, I have eaten up. Her writing is delicious, compulsive, bingeable, and this book is really, really hard to sum up in my little short summary. So we have Tisana, who is enslaved, wants to escape so that she can learn how to harness her magic so that she can come back and fight for her people. We also have a very grumpy hermit love interest that wants nothing to do than to stay in his cottage and tend to his garden. I loved him. His name was Max. Max, one of my favorite fantasy book boyfriends, although that phrase kind of cringes me out, but you know what I mean. I just loved him and Tisana's relationship, how patient he was with her, the growth that Tisana went through in this book. Funny, sweet, charming, so good. I can't wait to finish this series in 2024. And if you needed more convincing for all of my fantasy girls out there, you know that if the author puts in a side character named Sam, it's going to be a good book. And guess what? There's a best friend named Sam in this book. So that's all the sign that you needed, right? Carissa Broadbent, if you haven't read anything from her and you like fantasy romance, this is it. This is it right here. I also have to talk about an installment in one of my favorite series of all time, and that is the Thursday Murder Club. Today we're going to be talking about The Man Who Died Twice, which is the second book, I believe. I've loved all of them. They have all been 4 or 5 stars, but this one just had the emotional impact that I needed. I've heard that the 4th book, the purple one, The Last Devil to Die, is also going to do the same thing to me, but maybe at a more elevated rate, and I'm going to feel a lot of things when I read that book, but this one definitely did that for me in the year of 2023. A quick synopsis of the series is you have got 4 elderly people living in a retirement village in the English countryside. They get together every Thursday to discuss and try and solve cold cases. They're pretty good at it, and then when an actual murder happens within their general proximity, they decide to take matters into their own hands, much to the police and detectives' chagrin. Like, these characters, Joyce and Ibrahim in particular, I just love them to death. I can't wait, but I'm also really scared to read book number 4. Getting into my romance highlights of the year. First of all, we're going to talk about Happy Place by Emily Henry. A quick synopsis is we have got ex-fiancés who end up both getting invited to their best friend's summer getaway. None of their friends know that these two have broken up, and so they fake it as to not ruffle any feathers. End up having to figure out whether or not they think that they're going to work again in the future. And beyond just the romance of this book, which was so good, so many sweet moments, so many difficult conversations had between our main characters, but it's also just an examination of friendship and what happens as you get older and you change within your circle of friends, what it means to be there for each other, how much you need to be there for each other. The quotes in this book had me swooning, had me sad, and I just thought that Harriet and Wynne were both very relatable characters. I absolutely loved this book. Again, I think this one was pretty polarizing for an Emily Henry book this year, but I haven't read a romance by her that I haven't loved, so thank you, Miss Emily Henry. Thank you. Now, my favorite romance book of the year was not Happy Place. My favorite romance of the year was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This book absolutely touched my heart in ways that I don't even know how to explain. We have got a woman who is up for a really, really big promotion at the hospital that she works at, and she's pretty much guaranteed this spot until Jacob also starts working at the hospital, and turns out he is also up for the promotion. These two kind of start off on a rocky path, but they end up writing letters back and forth to each other, hence the name Yours Truly, but it extends into so much more than just that throughout this novel. And what most people love about it, and what I love about it, is the anxiety representation exhibited in our main character of Jacob. I felt so seen that every time it talked about things that were going through his head on a loop, I was like, I didn't realize other people felt like that. Little things like wanting to know in advance what the parking situation was at a house party and being afraid to go if you don't know where to put your car. I was like, oh, that I've had that, like, to the point where it makes my heart like uncomfortable. Do you park in the driveway? If so, are you going to block somebody in? Can you park on the road? Is there a certain way that you need to park? And sometimes those thoughts get so overwhelming that you were just like, it's going to be easier for me not to go. And in this book, these two decide to fake date for purposes of their own, but through their fake dating, they form the most beautiful friendship, and we just see the consideration that our female main character has for our male characters' anxiety, and how she wants to make his life easier and more beautiful. And they the way that they work together, and just the notes that they exchanged. It even has some tropes in this book that I don't like. But this book, easily my favorite romance I have ever read. Even if you're not a romance person, please, 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 please pick this book up and just give it a chance. It's so good. And the last book that I'm going to talk about is, again, a series. We're going to see if I can hold the whole thing up. I am missing book 1 because it is at school, because I let somebody borrow it and forgot to bring it home. But oh my gosh, we've got Throne of Glass, the one, the only, by Sarah J. Maas. I would love to eventually get the matching covers in book 1 and 2. I don't have them, and it's fine. Now, I have read up to here, and I've just now started Kingdom of Ash, but there is no way that this entire series isn't going to be a favorite for me for this year. The things I have gone through with these characters, I have put in so much emotional and mental investment into the story of Selena and Terrasen and Kaol and Dorian and Manon and Irene, just all of them. Like, how do you go on once this is over? I don't know how to sum it up. We've got a really hard on her luck assassin that ends up becoming the king's champion. Y'all, it turns into so much more than that, and the world expands so much, and every single point of view you love and you're rooting for, and your gut is torn up when they go through hard things, and you're rooting for their relationships and for their future and the future of the kingdom and the future of the world. And this has put me back on my high fantasy game. 2024 is going to be the year of high fantasy, and it is because Sarah J. Maas has made me return to the beautiful complexity and the lessons and the empathy that we can learn through visiting other worlds. Editing Heather here. Hi. I just realized I completely forgot the last book I needed to mention, which is Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Just gonna insert a really quick synopsis of this book, but basically we're following a man who moves with his family to a new home, and they find out that there is a pet cemetery within walking distance from where they are living. There's a tragic accident, and from there things get really creepy. This was my first Stephen King book, and it pretty much changed my view on the horror genre. I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to pick up more Stephen King because I read this. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me as we discussed my top 15 books / book series of 2023. Were any of these books on your favorite list? If so, please tell me which ones. And if you had any other books that you absolutely loved in 2023 that you'd like me to check out in the new year, please leave that down below. I love every single one of you. Thank you so much for tuning into my videos. Thank you for the growth that you've helped my channel achieve in the year of 2023. I'm flabbergasted every time I get even one new subscriber or comment. It makes my day that I can sit here and talk about books and have conversations with people about them. Thank you. As usual, all of my social media is linked down below. Please leave a comment, like this video because it really helps support my channel. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you in the next one in just a few days. Bye guys.